Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Ursula von der Leyen has solidified her leadership in the European Commission by securing a second term with 401 votes in the European Parliament. Now, despite facing criticism from far-right MEPs, her victory paves the way for her to address significant challenges, including Europe's political shift to the right and the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. Joining us on TVP World to discuss von der Leyen's agenda, the new European Parliament, and the implication of Hungary's recent controversial diplomatic move is Jolanta Szymańska, EU expert from the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So, can you tell us how significant it is that Ursula von der Leyen's re-election as president of the European Commission, and what does it mean for EU stability?
Well, it means that all the members of the European Parliament, at least the mainstream coalition, decided to give their voice to the stability and continuity. Because we are facing, as the European Union, a lot of challenges, mainly related to Russian aggression to Ukraine, and we also have a question mark when it comes to result of elections in the United States. So we need a stable leadership. So Ursula von der Leyen is a stable leader, and especially taking into account the latest development when it comes to Hungarian presidency and activity of Viktor Orban in EU diplomacy, some MEPs could realize that Ursula von der Leyen is a stable solution. I mean, so we really want to have this continuity instead of troublemakers like Viktor Orban or someone we don't know, because it's good to stress that Ursula von der Leyen was actually the only one candidate. We didn't have like a very long list of potential candidates, because it was very clear from very beginning that she is a main candidate, that we don't have other options. So, this is a good news for the European Union, that she received more than 400 votes, more than 5 years ago. So it's a very stable and very safe majority. So although we need to remember that we have far-right movements, far-right parties in parliament, but we still can see that the coalition is stable. Even Greens joined her support, what was not very certain. It was also not certain what the final result will be, because one day before the voting, it was a huge issue about her court issue with vaccination transparency. So it was not clear that she will receive such a huge majority, but she managed. So it means that members of the parliament prefer to have like a stable leadership.
Right, like you mentioned, 401 votes, that's actually more than her previous term. And maybe it is showing that people are looking for the stability that you're talking about. And I also want to draw attention to what you mentioned earlier about Hungary being, well, what you described as a troublemaker, because we do see Ursula von der Leyen describe this issue, and we really see her getting very animated and kind of slightly emotional about this topic, and we do have a soundbite of Ursula von der Leyen addressing this particular topic. So let's take a look.
Yeah.
We must also invest more in our security and defense. Russia is still on the offensive in eastern Ukraine. They are banking on a war of attrition, on making the next winter even harsher than the last. Russia is banking on Europe and the West going soft, and some in Europe are playing along. 2 weeks ago, a European Union Prime Minister went to Moscow. This so-called peace mission was nothing but an appeasement mission. This was a plain appeasement mission.
So you can see they're like very obviously disturbed by Prime Minister Orban's action to go to Moscow. Hey, can you help us understand that front of the development and what's got her so animated?
Well, it was no secret that Viktor Orban and Hungary has different policy towards Russia and Ukraine and this conflict. But I would like to also stress that no one expects Viktor Orban to become or pretend to be the main diplomat of the European Union. It's not the role of presidency to make European diplomacy. We have a special commissioner, a high representative for foreign affairs, currently Joseph Borrell, who is responsible for this portfolio. So Viktor Orban suddenly hiding his intention and plans were traveling around, I mean, not only in Europe, but consulting China, United States, with his peace mission. So we, in the last days, could observe very strict reactions of member states criticizing his activity, but also European Commission reacted very fast, lowering the rank of meetings under Hungarian presidency, especially those organized in Budapest. So this was the first reaction, and Ursula von der Leyen's speech was also very critical, and paradoxically, I think this could help her to gain such a huge majority in the assembly. So somehow, paradoxically, Viktor Orban and his activity could help for Ursula von der Leyen. But I want to also say one thing, that this is just the beginning of Ursula von der Leyen's job. Now she has a huge task to create a new college. And in the next weeks, she will consult member states, trying to manage ambitions of member states, trying to support like gender balance, political balance, and keeping all these factors together, and creating the European Commission that would also need to be accepted by the European Parliament. So this is just the beginning of the process, and if this process will be successful, we could expect the new Commission at the beginning of November. So it's a long time now for consultations, for giving candidates by member states, finding a portfolio, deciding about who will cover which portfolio, and so on and so on. So we will still witness a lot of developments in the EU in the next weeks.
There's definitely a lot of challenge ahead, like you mentioned, and this coalition building is going to be a very difficult exercise going forward for her, especially since we're seeing a little bit of fragmentation, again led by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, establishing his Patriots kind of a coalition by himself. Do you think this is going to actually fragmentate the European Parliament, the European Commission, or do you think there should be a way where Ursula von der Leyen will be able to consolidate the Union?
I think that she's able to rule without looking at the far-right parties, because she still have this stable majority thanks to her mainstream coalition. But activity of Orban, it's also good to mention that also his diplomatic activity, I think, was made mainly for political purposes inside the European Union, because at the same time he was creating this Patriots of Europe group in the parliament. So, as I mentioned before, I think that the paradox is that it can give Ursula von der Leyen more credit from the mainstream parties. Let's see the Greens, for example. Greens were not very satisfied because of lack of, or changes in a Green Deal that she proposed in a previous term, that she was proposing more pragmatic approach towards European Green Deal. So the Greens were not satisfied, but still for them, Ursula von der Leyen is a guarantee for stability. They prefer Ursula von der Leyen, although she's maybe not delivering as they would expect in terms of Green Deal issue. So I think she has a stable situation in the European Parliament, but still it doesn't make difference that she will have to consult with many leaders, for example, Meloni, Giorgia Meloni in Italy. Although she is representing the conservative group, she expects very prestigious position for Italy in the next college because she received quite good result in the European Parliament. So there are many expectations from the member states, and of course Ursula von der Leyen will have to manage to create a college that would be accepted not only by the Parliament but also by the leaders of the European Union. So it's not an easy task, as we have big polarization in Europe.
Yeah, and speaking of this polarization, I would like to draw attention back to what you mentioned earlier, that in the current state, Ursula von der Leyen can draw together a coalition without the input of the far-right party to form this stable majority. But we do see that when it comes to popularity, these populist kind of figures are getting significant numbers in the polls, and they are still up and on the rise. Is there an argument to be made that maybe whatever the issue, that the voter who casted their ballots for these people needs to be also addressed so that this doesn't become a consistent trend?
Yeah, of course, especially in the Western Europe, we can see clear symptoms of this rise of far right. Let's see the French elections. I mean, the final result is quite positive for the left parties, but
Sure.
we know that the social support is completely different than the
Right.
final outcome. So what I want to say, and what I think Ursula von der Leyen is aware of, that she needs to adopt some issues to the social expectations. That's why, for example, she mentioned in her speech yesterday the problem of housing. She even mentioned that she would like to have a commissioner representing for housing problems, or put more emphasis on the farming sector, because taking into account that Ukraine is on the way to the European Union, having such a strong farming sector, we need to adopt as a European Union, and we need to address fears of our farmers. So I mean, this will also influence the shape of the future commission and the portfolios of the new commission, I think.
Right, so the vote has concluded, but this is definitely not the end, but just the beginning for this new European Parliament and Ursula von der Leyen's second term. Thank you so much for coming in and helping us break down the situation. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude this edition of our interview. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.